Open squabbles and even a rebellion have broken out in the White House against the backdrop of the ongoing war in Iran. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance started whispering in Donald Trump's ear that he doubts the accuracy of the information from his Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth about the war in Iran and weapons stockpiles. The Atlantic reports this. It is noted that J.D. Vance has repeatedly questioned such reports from the Department of War during closed meetings and has urged Donald Trump not to trust Pete Hegseth. At the same time, the former head of the U.S. Border Patrol, the notorious Greg Bovino, accused Donald Trump's team of cowardice and betraying the ideals for which Americans voted for Trump. It turned out that Trump decided to shut down the mass deportation program for illegal migrants and fired Bovino out of cowardice. At least that's what is being said. That's what Bovino says. My name is Alexi Pichi, let's discuss this together. But before we start, please subscribe to this channel, like this episode, and leave any comment under this video. Also subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pichi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. Let's begin with J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States. The Atlantic, citing high-ranking officials from the Trump administration, writes that he is openly skeptical about the accuracy of the information on the war in Iran and the weapons stockpiles that the Pentagon, headed by Pete Hegseth, provides to Donald Trump. J.D. Vance says, "Listen, I think the Pentagon is seriously deceiving us." It is noted that Vance has repeatedly questioned such reports from the War Department during closed meetings. Both War Secretary Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dan Kane have publicly stated that the U.S. weapons stockpiles are significant. They stated that the damage inflicted on Iranian forces after 8 weeks of fighting was staggering. But J.D. Vance's advisors say that the Vice President presented his concerns to Trump as his own. He says, "Listen, I'm not implying anything, but I think there's a questionable point there." So, J.D. Vance didn't accuse Pete Hegseth or Kane of misleading the president, but he hinted at it. He hinted like, "Listen, of course I don't want to accuse anyone, anything can happen, but I think something's not right there." And so, according to The Atlantic, J.D. Vance started whispering more and more often to Donald Trump that he thinks the military is deceiving him. In his public statement, J.D. Vance of course said that the head of the Pentagon is doing an excellent job and mentioned Hegseth's work with Trump aimed at ensuring the morale of the top military leadership. However, a White House official reported that the vice president, quote, "is asking a lot of curious leading questions about our strategic planning and is casting doubt on it." And so, according to sources from The Atlantic, the positive statements from Pentagon leaders at best give an incomplete picture of what is happening. According to these internal assessments, Iran actually retains 2/3 of its air force, the majority of its missile launch capabilities, and most of its small fast boats, which can mine and obstruct movement in the Strait of Hormuz. And one of the publication's sources noted that, at least in terms of restoring halted maritime trade, this is a real threat. He says that everything you state publicly is not true. And, well, just think about it. 2/3 of Iran's air force, according to classified information, has been preserved, and you can't say that the army is completely destroyed. Although back in March, Pete Hegseth was boasting about the complete control of the Iranian sky by the American military, already in April, let me remind you, Iranian troops shot down American fighter jets, which started an intense rescue operation that the U.S. Secretary of War compared to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In addition, Tehran is putting more and more missile launches back into operation every day. About half of them are available again after the initial 2-week ceasefire. And so, officials and outside advisors told the publication that the use of key weapons, in particular interceptors used to defend against Iranian missiles, namely Patriot interceptors, and offensive weapons such as Tomahawk missiles, has led to a serious shortage. In particular, joint air-to-surface standoff missiles are in very short supply. That's what Pentagon sources are saying. In addition, this shortage undermines the United States' ability to fight future wars, despite efforts to quickly produce replacements. And so, J.D. Vance expresses concern about the ammunition shortage in meetings with the president and other national security officials. Even before the war with Iran, these stockpiles were depleted due to sluggish production and the transfer of ammunition to Ukraine and Israel. Pentagon officials have warned that the shortage threatens the military's ability to win in a hypothetical conflict against Russia or China. And this is where things start to get really interesting. US Vice President J.D. Vance was skeptical about the benefits of attacking Iran even before this war began. Let me remind you, even Donald Trump publicly admitted that J.D. Vance, quote, was perhaps less enthusiastic about the conflict, which turned out to be extremely unpopular among American voters. That's why J.D. Vance is now carefully using this to put forward his candidacy for the US presidency in 2028. Like, well, I told you so, I warned you even before the war about what this could lead to. And Vance, by the way, was hinting back then that he was against these endless wars. We could get involved in another war like the ones in Iraq or Afghanistan. And the worse Trump looks in this situation, the better it is for J.D. Vance. However, it's important to remember that J.D. Vance must balance things and maintain power without alienating the team. Well, because this Trump team will just get rid of him before 2028. And let me remind you, J.D. Vance also spoke out against strikes on Iran and the Yemeni Houthis back in 2025. So, when it comes to war, he already has a strong track record going into an election if they suddenly happen during a wave of Donald Trump's defeats. But it's not just J.D. Vance who is dissatisfied with the state of affairs. Do you remember that charismatic man in a long coat who walked around and dispersed protests in the U.S. when the immigration service was out of control in Minneapolis?
Gas is coming. I'm sorry, warning. Gas warning. Warning. Gas warning. Oh, hey. Gas. Gas. Gas.
So the former commander of the U.S. Border Patrol, Greg Bovino, has accused Trump's team of cowardice. He believes that members of Trump's team chickened out and convinced the president to shut down the program of mass deportations of illegal migrants. In an interview, Bovino said that mass deportations had the personal approval of Donald Trump. But members of his team were afraid of how these actions would affect public opinion and the results of future elections. Bovino is sure that someone inside Trump's team gave in and persuaded the American president to stop these harsh crackdowns on illegal immigrants. But Bovino is sure that this needed to continue, and next I'll quote him. Our culture is at stake. If you let so many people with a different culture into the country, people who don't care about your culture, then you have a problem. And we've seen this in practice in every city where we've operated. Our culture is in danger. From millions of foreigners who don't care about your culture, who don't care about our history and beliefs. And I think this is a bigger threat to our society, which we Americans have built, than violent crimes and terrorism. Well, I'll just note that Greg Bovino held the position of National Commander in the U.S. Border Patrol from 2025 to 2026, but was demoted due to a scandal. He had the right to join the service in Minneapolis, and in March 2026 he announced that he was resigning from federal service. And now he just says that there are cowards on Trump's team. Well, it seems that things really aren't going well on Trump's team. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation using the links and details in the description of this video or by using the QR code on your screen. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.